You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
It's a weekend. A weekend to what?
Weekend to what? I was exhaling.
It's a weekend to the contest for Brandi Carlile.
Right.
It's going very well. We highlighted it on the intro of this episode as well as right now, and then we'll talk about it at the end as well. But you still have 4 or 5 days, depending on when you listen to this, to enter. You just go to Instagram, not just like any place in Instagram. You have to go to our Instagram and find the video with 2 free tickets for Brandi Carlile and follow the instructions. But it's fun.
Yep. Yeah, until July 9th.
July 9th is the deadline. We're going to announce the winner on July 9th, which is very soon.
Well,
are you excited?
I'm excited.
Do you have any idea who is going to win yet?
No, because we don't have all the entries. I have no clue. Do you?
Yes.
Yes? Who's going to win?
No clue.
I know who's going to win.
Who?
The winner.
There you go.
Yeah, that was funny. Laugh with me. I need that to not be a wah, wah, wah.
I wish we had sound effects.
I'd
like a sound effects board. I could push a button.
I'm a sound effects board. I can make all the sound effects.
Stephanie does tend to talk in sound effects. It's really cute. She talks about, like, my favorite is when she's out driving or when she tells a story about when she was out driving, because everything is like, and then there was this car and then I got so pissed off at the car and I thought, son of a bitch. And then the car honked at me, honk, honk. And then I turned on my blinker, click, 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 click.
This is not an accurate representation.
It's super accurate.
It is not.
It's exactly how you are. It's spot on.
It's false.
Nope, it's true.
Yeah.
Ask the children.
I'm going to.
So you had a question for me earlier this morning.
Oh, yes.
That I was distracted when you asked, and then I'm like, oh, we should probably talk about it on the podcast. Do you remember what that question was?
Not verbatim, but I remember the feel of it. So.
Well, unfortunately, we're only after verbatim questions today.
Well,
so.
There's no place for me here then.
Let's hear it.
Let's see if I can do it. I asked, because you have a very strong interest now in, I guess, people's experience with the Mormon Church, what their experiences are, like the coming out, like basically their Mormon stories.
Mm-hmm.
Hashtag, not the podcast, but yes, the podcast is also really big that you're into. I don't know why I said hashtag. Okay. I'm nervous right now. I feel a little awkward. That's okay. You said before, like you've talked about it on the show, about how you felt like you weren't affected by the church at all. Because like it was just something in your life around whatever, but it didn't have any effect on you. Yeah. And then you realized like it had a massive effect on you in different ways, but it had a massive effect on you. And you are very interested and intrigued in a deep, like compassionate way, but also like this drawn way to other people's experiences. And once they realized the actual hold, so it's not like you're not interested in the church, but when people are realizing the holds and kind of breaking free of that environment. And so I was curious of what has shifted, what is shifted in you that all of a sudden this is so important to you. It is important. I'm not. I realize that just sounded like I was minimizing experiences, and I'm not. I have a very strong opinion myself. I'm just saying what shifted to where it's so important to you.
I don't think what shifted in the sense of why this is so important to me now is just the realization of how much of an impact it did have on my life. It was one of those things that was just like, oh my gosh, so many different layers and parts to it. And hearing a lot of other people's stories via that podcast, right? The Mormon Stories podcast, available wherever you get podcasts.
No hashtag needed.
No hashtags needed. But hearing their stories and hearing the things that I can relate to and relate with has been really fascinating, right? So some of the same things that I can relate to coming from the mouths of people that were active in the church far longer than I was. Because we weren't active. I was 9, 10, something like that, when we just kind of stopped going to church. And hearing that relatability, as well as just also hearing the in-depth reality of what people have experienced because of the church, has been really, really eye-opening as well. Because some of it, I never even I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it at all. And now that I think about it, I'm like, good God, there are so many effects of that church, especially here in this state. Mm-hmm. And it's sad. It's really, really sad. A lot of what I've been listening, because they do a good job of running their social media as well, and breaking up their episodes, because their episodes are like 4, 5, 6, sometimes 8 hours long. They'll have like 2-part episodes that each episode's like 4 hours long. So there's a lot of Mormon story.
Yeah.
But they do a good job now of breaking it up into some clips and some more consumable bites. And especially they just started a TikTok. And hearing the effects of people that were like diehard Mormons and believers and active in the church, and how much the impact of all of that has had on their lives, it's just really sad. Like it angers me.
Yeah.
And lately they've been highlighting a lot of, because the whole thing too is like just all of the discrepancies between what the Mormon church not just portrays, but teaches, talks about, everything, and how much of that is vastly not true. How much of it has no basis in reality. And I'm not just talking about like Christianity in general, right? Like the actual teachings. And the fact is, like, Joseph Smith is a person, if you're not familiar with the church. Joseph Smith is the founder of the Mormon church. He's somebody that, we're talking like back in the 1830s. So it's not very long ago. So it's really easy to go back in time and find information about this guy and find information about that time period. It's not like, Jesus that we have to go off of the Bible with. And it's just wrong. The information that they have been teaching everybody all these years, it's just wrong. And instead of like admitting to it, they just double down on a lot of stuff. And it's like, that is so detrimental. I was thinking about it this morning, kind of after you asked me that question. It was running in the back of my mind, where it was like, if we look at, I'll just look at this town that I grew up in rather than try to look at the state, because I feel like the town is a very good example of the state, just on a smaller scale. Everybody's Mormon, right? And granted, there's maybe, 5 or 10% of the population back when I was growing up that wasn't. It may have been higher. I don't know. I didn't run any surveys back in the day, but everybody's Mormon. There is maybe a population of 10,000 people in this city at the time, probably less, 8,000 or 9,000. And there was 4 or 5 churches in this town for that many people. So you basically have one, stone throws away from each other. Everybody in local politics, government, local government at all LDS, from the top down. So you have everybody that is running the city, also LDS. Everybody that's teaching school, everybody that, it's just everybody. And I was thinking about how the church in general, like from the top down, right, from the president of the church all the way down, but also on the smaller scale, like within the space of your local ward, they call them wards. You'll have a bishop, and you'll have different members of the bishopric, and then, of course, the people that go to the church and everything like that. But this progression from the top down of telling you something and then reality not reflecting that in real life. And I think about that all the time, about how the church portrays this thing that it is and that it upholds and that we should be, But then I know all the motherfuckers behind the scenes because I grew up in this town. Like, I know that you're fake. I know that what you're talking about and what you're trying to represent is not what you're practicing, right? And the condescending, judgmental undertones of everything on top of the realization and the knowledge of like, this is not what you are practicing. There were so many times I can think of like all the different bishops that I had interaction with over the course of my life, whether it was when we were in church or with, when I was no longer, going to church or anything like that. But you knew who the bishop was, or if your friend's dad was the bishop, you knew that. And they're just regular guys. They're just fucking, dads trying to do their dad thing and raise their family and everything like that. And then on top of it, they have this role as a bishop, which is a volunteer position. And the ways that they would represent themselves as a bishop, but then yet their family wasn't in line with all the morals of the church. And it's like, how can you go to church and tell your congregation and the people that look up to you, and you're supposed to be the conduit for them, and not just God, but also, like the upper presidency, whatever, of the church. How can you go there and behave in a certain way and expect them to come to you and talk to you about all of these things that they're doing, or reprimand them in a sense of whatever the fucking punishment is that they, you can't take sacrament for the next 2 weeks or a month or whatever the case may be. But then your house isn't in order. Like, it's that whole thing of like, you can't throw stones. That's not the right metaphor. But I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about what growing up in that environment is like, even just from like the bigger scope of things, where things are always kind of like shady. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you expand outwards to the state, in the way that it's basically the same thing, where all of our government is in bed with the church because they're all church members in some way, shape, or form, right? And then how it's just this really shady, convoluted, we tell you something, but then this is what we're actually doing. And I mean, it's so fucking bizarro.
Yeah.
And it's the ramifications of it and what it does to people, I think it's just terrible. And I don't think people really grasp that. And I think that even once that process of leaving the church and getting out of it and everything like that, I think it takes a long time before you start to see how detrimental it is.
They also make it very difficult for you to ask questions that are questioning,
Mm-hmm.
like anything. If you see something or have something that is questioning the authority or what they have been teaching or what they're doing, then it is very much shame based on you.
Yeah.
And so it is flipped to how you are wrong or you don't have faith, and they make it very difficult for you to even question. You're just not supposed to question, just accept. And
yeah, they did the Mormon Stories podcast thing. They did a recent episode with this woman, and I don't know anybody's names or anything like that. I apologize. You can go find it. But it was like a big 2-part episode where they were basically comparing, because there's X number of things that make something a cult, right? Cults have all of these things in common, and there's like a list of whatever, 10, 15 or whatever. And they were going through and basically applying them all to the church, and how the church is essentially ran and operated and behaves and treats its members in all of these kind of different areas and all this kind of different stuff exactly the same way that a cult does. Wow. And it's fascinating when you look at it that way. But obviously that's like major taboo. Yeah. Especially in this state, right? You can't walk around calling the entire population of this state members of a cult, because somehow that has a negative connotation. But the reality is, some fucking white dude back in the 1800s made up a fucking story to have power over other people and feel like he was important. And here we are a few hundred years later. It's just weird.
It's way weird.
It's super weird. But I like what they're doing. I haven't...
Who's doing?
The Mormon Stories podcast.
Yes.
I like how they're continually trying to share information and help people, and it's massively needed. Do you know what I mean? It's just massively needed. I wish so badly that because I still have a lot of like near and dear, close friends that I love greatly that are in the church and heavily in, like, you know, it's their life and their thing. And I don't judge them for it. I'm not mad. I'm not upset. I don't hold any grudges. I just wish for the love of God that they would take the opportunity to try to look at something different and expand outside of the scope of what they were born and raised in. And I know how hard that is.
Yeah.
But it's like you have this opportunity to, you know, why are you continuing to perpetuate a unhealthy, toxic, like life-destroying fucking religion that isn't doing anything other than doubling down on like all of their rhetoric and bullshit and nonsense. So,
yeah.
But you can't force feed anybody.
You can't.
I'd like to.
Right. It would be like there's so many times where I have like that come up. I'll have clients that are questioning in a sense, but it's like this, the brink, right? Just the brink of questioning. And I listen. It's not like, well, you should check out this podcast or this, you know. Like at what point I wish I could say, like, here are these other things, but like that's their process. And then there's other ones that are struggling with the dynamics, but are not questioning, are trying to abuse themselves into falling in line and trying to make that. And again, I wish like I can't explain to them like, well, this is the problem, you know. You just have to hold for them and allow them to process, and maybe, you know, different ways of thought. You know, we work on releasing, but just to give the flat out information, as you would say, force feed in a sense, that wouldn't help. But I wish there was more we could do.
Do you ever think about, do you ever have that? If, I don't know if it has yet, it doesn't sound like it has, but if it does, do you feel like you can at least recommend them in that direction? Like, hey, there's this podcast that you might find interesting, and it's called the Mormon Stories Podcast. Because the truth is, he also, the host of that show is John Dehlin, but he also interviews people that are still part of the church, that are still members of the church. And do you know what I mean? And he's always very respectful about the whole process. He also was Mormon, raised Mormon, brought up all that kind of stuff. And so he doesn't approach it from this like negative hate mongering kind of mentality. Yeah. Even though at times I wish he would. But I think it's a very good entry point for Mormons that are questioning and or wondering and curious, because it also is like, bless his heart, he's a very nice man, I suppose. I've never met him, obviously. John, if you're listening, come on the podcast. But he's very Mormon still. Yeah. Like, it's funny. He's not. He's been excommunicated and everything like that.
I was like, that's odd.
But the way that he talks, and he just, like, he looks like your bishop. He looks like he's, you know, definitely the leader of the young men's group. And he very much has that Mormon vibe and feel to him. Yeah. So it's really funny and interesting. Sometimes I get stuck listening to him because I'm like, I don't hate, but that vibe is hard for me to kind of swallow sometimes. I don't like it. Yeah. And it's so easy to hear and see. And some of the guests that he has on are still like super stuck in it. And I can't listen to them because it's even worse than trying to listen to Whitney Cummings.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, it's
everybody's up there burying their testimony for a 4-hour podcast.
Did you say burying?
Yeah. No, I said bear. Burying.
Oh, it's like burying.
Like a ball bearing.
Burying this testimony. Ball bearing.
I used to think it was Barry.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. I used to think Bishop Rick was like Bishop Rick.
Oh, yeah. Bishop Rick.
Yeah.
Good old Bishop Rick.
Yeah.
He was the first bishop.
I'm like, who's Rick?
I'd really like to meet this Bishop Rick one time.
I didn't go that far, but I was just like,
That's so funny.
It's like, it's everywhere. They got a Bishop Rick in like every single church. It's a big deal. I guess Rick's what you name your kid.
It's what happens after you become bishop is you have to change your name to Rick.
There you go.
So it's a sign of honor.
Okay.
Now, instead of, your name is John. Nope, it's Bishop Rick.
Bishop Rick. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would actually. If that came up, I will. If open conversation comes up to where they are looking for information and seeking that and not fleshing through their emotions and their process. But if it comes to where like that is a thing that can be helpful for them instead of damaging at that moment, absolutely. I will not hold back.
Yeah.
I will. But I'm also careful, not because
you have to be respectful, right?
It's like, this is their journey. This is their journey. This isn't for me to impose my thoughts on. I can see in a broader spectrum, and then they may be able to in that moment, and I will absolutely share that, but I'm very careful to not like lead,
Yeah. Speaking of journey, right?
Don't stop believing.
Everybody's on a journey.
Yeah.
A journey of self-discovery.
True.
Sometimes, have you sat with the fucking purpose or meaning of life lately? Have you?
Have I contemplated the meaning of life lately?
This is just a side note from what I was going to say, but
I've struggled in some things and thought, like, what the fuck? Like, what is, like, I guess, but not really. I'm like, what is the point? What is the point? I felt some down moments, but I haven't really.
Like, what is the point of life?
Like, of a few things.
Yeah.
But I haven't like sat there and contemplated the meaning in a while. I've been trying to keep my head above water.
Do you ever remember being a teenager? I asked Asher this the other day.
If he remembered being a teenager?
I did. I asked our 15-year-old son if he remembered being a teenager. But we were driving, running errands, and I was listening to music, and I was feeling all the fun stuff that you feel when you have good music that you like and a good song. And I was sitting there, and I was asking him if he had how important music was to me when I was his age and when I was a teenager, and how significant just music was. And I was wondering if he had the same connection and if music was important to him. And it doesn't sound like it, which is fine, right? It might change for him. And if he doesn't have some sort of special relationship with music, that's fine. But I just remember thinking so much. I could picture so much back when I was a kid, around his age, a teenager, where everything is so emotional and you're so full of all this angst and anxiety and stress and emotions, but you have no context of understanding all of it. How much music helped channel and direct it in like this subconscious way. And how many times I would always just kind of sit there and zone out thinking about life. And I guess in the, bigger, broader sense of like the bigger scope of what life is about and what my life is about. And it's all kind of interwoven with music in some regards. Can you relate? Or am I...
You're up in the night.
Am I?
No. Yeah, I can relate. I can see, like, I have the vocabulary for it now. And like the way you're describing it. But back then, like it was very much. It was so much. It was my escape. I would take off. I would feel understood. It would also like break me, and like there's so many different things. But there was always music. I couldn't even sleep when I was a teenager without my radio on. I had to have like the music always. Same like with Asher, getting in the shower and going with my boombox. I didn't realize. I knew I liked music, but I didn't realize now like the significance of it and what it held and how it like got me through things. There's still songs that like. It's like a time portal, it takes you back. I think he is the same because as much as he listens to music, as much as he has it going on, he's also doing other things on YouTube, but it's a strong thing for him, and he'll play it and want to hear songs. He'll be zoning out with his like one pod on or whatever and having it cranked up loud. I just don't think he's got the connection for it yet, but I could be wrong.
Now that you mention it, I think that it's going to be a lot different than us because they have so many other things that they can distract with. Yeah. Where we didn't have social media. We didn't have a phone. And so it was like you could watch TV or you could listen to music. And those were like, well, or you could read a book.
That's still an option now, teenagers. You can still read a book.
And so we were probably the last generation that music had such an impact on. because we didn't have all those other things, you know.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember how CDs felt, and not just the hard metallic of it, but like the excitement over getting the new album and opening it up and going through the book and looking at all the different pictures, and like I can still see all the different album covers, even though they weren't, you know, LPs, they were CDs. But
did you have that with cassette tapes? Because I have that with cassette tapes.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty grateful now that we don't have to go through the torture of rewinding or fast-forwarding, getting it just right. And yeah, the flip back and forth, or when you hear shit, you need to get the pen to fix the tape. Pull it out too fast and it breaks. You're like, oh.
Did you ever tape it back together?
No, I didn't know that was a thing.
If you were really, really careful,
mourn,
and you could do it, you could tape the tape back together.
What? How did?
Yeah.
MacGyver, where were you in my life when I needed that? I would be destroyed, and not just like upset. You've witnessed teenagers like destroyed. Like that was the end. Like
when the tape broke.
It is all over now. Because it's like you're listening to the music that you're connecting with at that moment, and it's such a hard thing, and you're in it, and then it's just another, like, when that breaks and you're like, I can't breathe.
I remember being so careful with CDs and making sure that it was handled properly and clean. And then at some point it seemed, I don't know if like we just all got used to having CDs and so it didn't really fucking matter anymore, or if they made CDs better in some way, shape, or form so they could handle a couple of scratches. But there came a point where you're like, where's that fucking CD? And then you pull it out from underneath like the passenger seat and blow it off and rub it on your shirt and then put it in and it fucking plays. But there was a time period where you're like, you have to handle them very carefully.
It's not even a fingerprint.
Fingerprints on them.
Like
you'd have cleaner and like all sorts of different things.
Right. Did you have like one of those like machines, whatever?
Yeah.
Like you would have to like sit there and buff it, and you had the special stuff.
So I guess CDs probably got stronger. Maybe
they probably did,
or we just got used to them.
I don't know. When's the last CD I have that I had? Like, let's try this again. Let's see if I can find the word. I need a buffer. Like maybe buff out that rivet in me. The last CD that was added to my library of CDs was Brandi Carlile by You. You gave it to me. But even before that, that definitely phased out. So I don't know how tough they are now. Can you still buy CDs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can still buy CDs.
Is it like what were those record companies that you could like order so many CDs
Columbia
in the mail?
House.
Columbia House. Yes, thank you. Like those. Can you still get them through them?
I don't know. I don't know if they're still a thing or not. That'd be funny if they were. They probably are around somewhere.
How many, I got in trouble with Columbia House.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was a fucking racket designed to fucking steal parents' money from their fucking teenage kids.
It was totally it was
what? This is 99 cents and I can get 10 of them?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the bills come and you're like, uh-oh. Like hiding stuff. Like, it'll go away, right? I'm just a kid.
I remember the first time those bills showed up and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What is this? This was supposed to cost $10.
Yeah. Bastards.
So funny.
So I don't know. I was super careful at first. And then there was a movie that changed the way I handled CDs.
What was it?
Poetic Justice.
With
Janet Jackson.
That's right.
Tupac. So there was a scene, because for one, Janet Jackson, just like, oh, right. She was sitting in front of her, like.
Was Tupac in that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, big deal in that.
Sorry, I didn't see it.
You didn't see what?
Finish your story.
We have to go find Poetic Justice right now. Okay, well, it's silly. I'm definitely letting out a dorky kid thing, but she was just like, oh my God. And so I loved her.
Yeah.
And she was sitting in front of her radio, and how she would, like, she had all her CDs like on the floor in front of it. No cases, just like the discs. And I don't know, to my kid brain, that was like the most beautiful shot, and it just was perfect. And I'm like, that's where it's at. Like I felt like some kind of like.
That's how you had to be.
So yeah, so I totally idolized Janet Jackson and laid my CDs out on. They got all jacked up. I mean, I don't know how she kept them without scratches. Mine got scratches.
Did you alphabetize and organize your CD collection?
At times.
Yeah.
At times, and then.
And throw it all out the window.
Yeah. So I will also do that with books, and then it just goes like that. That's a mood for me. Sometimes I go crazy, and sometimes I go chaotic.
I remember.
I just said crazy and chaotic. Those are my two spectrums. Those are both bad.
Sometimes I go a little crazy, and then the next time I go, let's stir crazy.
It's fine. It's fine.
Sometimes there's some chaos mixed in, and every now and then I get a little chaotic.
Is that better?
You're fine.
I feel like my audio's off. Okay.
No. I remember being a teenager and like the joy that I would feel when I finally decided, like, and it wasn't like I finally decided or anybody told me, but like suddenly I would just be like, I'm going to reorganize my room.
Yeah.
And then I would like move stuff around and switch up, the wall that my bed was on and where the dresser was. And it would feel like a whole new room.
Yeah.
And all you did was rearrange it. But there were so many times that I did that.
Yeah.
And it was like a thing.
Let's rearrange our room.
Do you think that was, I've thought about it with our room.
Yeah, let's
But there's
rearrange
nowhere
it.
else for our bed to go.
It's kind of how I feel, but maybe. I don't know.
You've been in our room.
I have.
There's nowhere else for it to go.
Right? But maybe. Let's think.
The only other place it could go is underneath the window that's on my side.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really work for us to sleep below a window.
Why? We can look up and look at the stars. We can sleep under the tree that we sleep under, or we can sleep under the window.
I think that
Should we?
Okay, well, that wasn't the point of me bringing up rearranging.
Why not? I think it's a great idea. What if it just like changes our whole room?
Let's
rearrange the entire house.
We could put the bed kitty corner in the room. So then it was at an angle like opposite the door.
Okay, this is why that's not going to work. Our sex is far too wild. Somebody's going in that kitty corner hole and getting hurt.
We could use the hole as part of the sex. Just another hole for the sex. But I had a point.
Okay, I'm sorry. Get to it.
I think why I rearranged my room was coping mechanisms for stress and anxiety and OCD. So I bet you if I could go back in time and highlight the spots when I did that, it was during very stressful times. And that was my way of controlling the things that I couldn't control, right? Wow. I can't control the outside world of what's going on for whatever reason, but this little room is my space that I have control over, and I can organize it and arrange it and structure it in a way that makes me feel happy and peaceful. So I think it was probably very much a coping mechanism. Did you have anything like that? Please tell me that you had something similar and I'm just not a psychotic, crazy, chaotic person.
You are not a psychotic, crazy, chaotic person? Psychotic, chaotic, crazy, none of those. You're not any of the otics.
I'm exotic.
You are exotic.
I'm intoxic. Go ahead. Sorry.
You're very, very much so. Right now, I think I'm drunk on you. So, absolutely. I didn't rearrange my room, but I would do, like when I had my first house, I would try and change things up as much as I could. I didn't put the pieces together. My room was very much just a disaster. It was a disaster. And it drove my parents crazy, and they hated it, and they would stay out a lot. So I think that was kind of like I kept it insane in some psychological way to keep it in my space, even though it caused me a lot of torment and probably did not help my mind either with all of that. But some of that is just like, it's like a shield, it's like a shield. But then my first house, like I would do different things, whether it was placement or trying to do touch-ups or paint or even like cabinet handles, a different set of towels. I would try so hard to change the way things were, and it also got kind of chaotic there too.
Yeah.
So I can see that. I just didn't have awareness of, that's what the change will make you feel better. It'll make you feel like you're in a new
just
space.
Something you can control,
almost.
Huh?
Yeah.
I wonder, think about this dynamic now that we're talking about, and relate it to Asher's room. And what does his room tell us about his mental state and his emotional state?
He used to keep it super clean.
Yeah.
And it's not like bad, but it's definitely a little more cluttered now.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah.
But I feel like his room is probably pretty on par, normal for a teenage kid, right?
Yeah, it's not crazy. It's just,
yeah,
it is different because he was always the one that would like just keep it clean. Like he was just really good about it.
Yeah.
Oh, not always. But maybe it's time to weed some stuff out and get some stuff out of there for him so he can have more clean.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Probably this whole house.
Probably.
You know, when we rearrange our room, I'm sure we'll find things that we can get rid of.
I know, but that's the problem too, is we find things that I'm like, oh, there you are. Where have you been? I forgot about you. Come here, you treasure. It's like Christmas. I'm like, look.
You're cute.
So yeah, we need to get rid of stuff.
Clean house.
Literally.
It's time.
I know, but it's so like, yes.
So originally, before we got super sidetracked on CDs and journeys of cleaning rooms and stuff like that, I was going to talk about therapy and how my therapy is going.
Okay.
It's been a while since I feel like we mention it quite frequently, but I haven't talked in detail about how it's going. And now as I start the process, I don't know how much detail I'm going to get into.
That's okay. You get to get into whatever feels right.
So I'm in therapy and we're moving on. No, I'm teasing.
Okay.
I've been lately over the last few weeks, the topic and or context of my mom has been coming up. And it turns out that there is some mom issues that I may be still dealing with.
Yeah.
That might be a surprise to some people. I don't know if people are aware that sometimes we have issues from our parents. That's a joke. You're supposed to laugh. But it's been really interesting because over the course of my life, I have gone through varying stages of processing in regards to my parents and the relationships that I have with them. And I feel like I spent a good chunk of time processing my mom's relationship or my relationship with my mom. And I almost got to like a happy place with it and a content place with it. And then I felt like I probably spent maybe the last 4 years or 5 years, whatever, some amount of time doing the same thing with my relationship with my dad. And if you think back, do you remember when it was that I went to California with him? That was probably like 2016 or something, huh?
Hold on, because I remember it was during it was either I believe it was at the end of 2015.
At the end of 2015? I think so.
Yeah.
That seems right. You're like, that is right.
Well, I have other markers for that as well, so yes.
Yeah. And that was probably kind of the beginning, perhaps, of when I started this journey of trying to process my relationship with my dad. And now I come to a place with it where I feel very at peace in regards to my relationship with him as well as who he is. Kind of just an acceptance of what it all is, both present as well as past. I thought I had done that with my mom. Turns out I hadn't.
Yeah.
And it makes me scared to think that it's just going to be this ongoing fucking journey of making peace with these assholes and then 10 years later having to process more information about them and make more peace with them along the way. And it probably will have something to do with that. But a lot of what I'm going through right now is processing my relationship with her and realizing that I had a lot of, and still do have a lot of resentment and anger and pain, just a lot of strong emotions wrapped up in our relationship. And my therapist asked me the other day at the end of our appointment, trying to remember exactly what he asked me. I've tried blocking it out, so I don't remember it, but it was something basically along the lines of like, can you hold that space of feeling all of those difficult emotions, all of that resentment and the anger and the frustration? Can you hold that at the same time of still being able to like have love and compassion and a relationship with her? Can you do those two things kind of at the same time and be able to hold that space. And I'm like, I think I am doing that, and I'm trying to do that, and I find myself kind of trying to do that. But I've also realized that that's a lot harder than I thought it was. Do you know what I mean? That's way easier said than done. And it's almost like, yeah, I can do that. And that's the thing that I want to do, because that seems like the mature adult thing to do. But it's not easy. Like, it's hard to hold those two things at the same time, right? The negative emotion and frustration and things that you have in relation to this person, as well as being able to see them for who they are and love them and all the other kind of compassionate things. So I don't know. It's not, it's also something that I wish was like over, in a sense. Like, I wish I didn't have this processing. I'm also realizing how much, and it's so funny because as I speak all of these things, it's like, you know, psychology 101. It's common sense fucking shit that Shakespeare would write about back in the day. But my relationship with her has vastly is a new word that I just made up, has vastly influenced my relationship with women across my whole life. And that's kind of a new understanding as well. When I remember going through the process of kind of processing my relationship with my dad and recognizing how that dynamic affected me in regards to relationships and how I would show up in relationships. And it helped a lot to kind of understand that and process that. And I think it made me a better person in our relationship, me and you. But now I'm looking at how much my relationship with my mom has influenced my relationship with women over the course of my life, as well as obviously you, my primary relationship for the last 10 years. And I'm kind of pissed about that. That one is kind of like frustrating for me. Whereas the one with my dad, I felt like I could, I guess, forgive him for, in a sense. But now it's like, because the way that I feel like it has influenced my relationships with women, like my relationship with my mom has influenced my relationship with women in a variety of different ways. But one of the ways that I'm processing with or processing and sitting with now is my anger towards women, and how that has manifested over the course of my life, and how in some ways that has directly correlated to the unresolved anger that I have for my mom, right? Because obviously she's the primary feminine role in my life from birth. And like, that frustrates me. That makes me mad at my mom, even though obviously it's not her fault. But it's like, I don't want to be angry at women. And I'm mad to think that in some way, shape, or form, I have treated women poorly over the course of my life, because I've been secretly angry at my mom, or subconsciously angry at my mom. But I think that's the truth. I think that that's an aspect of it, right? It's not the full truth and it's not the full spectrum, but I feel like that's probably an aspect of it. It's definitely an aspect of it. And I don't like that. And I'm rambling and laughing awkwardly. So what do you think, babe? What are some thoughts? If you would, please, so I don't have to keep rambling.
I'm so happy you shared. Like, I know that was really hard. It was a lot to come up, and you were
I'm sweating profusely.
Yeah. That was a big deal. I don't think you have to rush out of it. You can just maybe just sit for a moment and just like process everything you said. I realize it's a podcast. We got to keep talking, but
push pause for 15 minutes.
Like, that was not only some good awareness, that was good accountability, and like showing up for yourself in that moment and sharing that. That was really big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still hard.
It's way shitty.
Right?
Yeah, it sucks.
It's one of those things that it's like, gosh dang it. Because honestly, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And it's the same old story, right? It's just a process, and it'll get easier with time. And
you just had awareness.
Yeah.
You got to give it a minute.
Well, I've had awareness, for the last little bit.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do I sit in that space? And I also am aware that there are other things in that space that I'm not aware of. I can just feel them.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'd really like to know what they are.
Yeah.
Hurry up and make yourself known so that I can sit with you and feel you, so that I don't have to be in this weird fucking uncomfortable place of, you know, it's like sitting in a room blindfolded and knowing that there's people in that room, but not knowing who they are or where they're at or what they're doing. Just being able to feel that there's other people in that room, but not being able to see them. Yeah. I don't like that feeling.
I don't like that. What about when you take the blindfold off and you still have to sit there?
But then I can see them.
You can see them. Can you see all of them?
No, because there's some behind me.
They're all behind you. So,
and then somebody turns off the lights.
Just having awareness. Like, I wish that just having awareness would. I mean, it's happened twice in my life where I've had awareness and it was better. And I'm like, that's fantastic. Everything needs to be that.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah. You've got some awareness and you got some feels.
I also think I used to think that part of the process of kind of moving through this space with your parents and processing this stuff, right, had to involve them in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Had to involve them, whether it be having some conversations with them or connecting with them about some of this difficult stuff. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case now. I think it is for, like, it always is whatever is for you, right? It's not to say that this is the new gold standard that all mental health professionals are going to now pick up because Craig said it on a podcast, but
it's a very, very popular podcast.
I don't know if I have to necessarily process any of this actually with my mom and have conversations with her about this. And because I didn't have a lot of conversations with my dad when I was processing through my relationship with him. A lot of it was one-sided, me just feeling shit and going through stuff. So I kind of feel like I can probably do the same thing with my mom. And I kind of want to. Like, there's a part of me that feels like it's easier. I've had some really hard conversations with my mom over the years. And I don't like them.
Yeah.
I don't like having those hard conversations with her. And I also don't feel like it was... This is a hard thing to say. If mom is listening, I love you, mom. Obviously, she knows that. But hopefully you tuned out and turned off a while ago, like probably 300 episodes ago. But I'm realizing now, in the not too distant past, I've had some really hard conversations with my mom of things that I wanted changed, or I wanted her to recognize and I wanted her to see. And she definitely sat with me and she definitely heard me and she definitely listened, and I felt heard at the time and everything like that. But then I didn't feel like things really changed. Yeah. So I have resentment for that and anger for that. And so it's like, I don't want to have those hard conversations anymore if the result is not going to be what I want. Like, my relationship with my mom is very much driven by what I want. It's very much like me. It's mine. It's my relationship, right? You're here to give me what I want. And I mean, that's very childlike, right? That's very much like a kind of spoiled little brat in a sense, if I'm judging it from the outside. But I also think that that's probably really normal in a sense, right? Because that's kind of, yes, I care about my mom and her wants and her needs and what she's, I care about her, obviously, and I have compassion for her. But my primary focus is my needs and my wants. And it's like, this is what I need from you. This is what I want from you. And if you can't give it to me, then I don't want to waste my time asking for it, because it's just going to be one more thing that I get disappointed by, one more thing that frustrates me, one more thing that angers me. So is that an unreasonable thing to feel? Or should I have more compassion for the realization of course, she's just human and she's doing the best that she can. And my thing that I want from her, or the desire to have this result from this conversation or whatever the case may be, isn't realistic, right? It's just not reality. It's just this, poor little boy trying to get what he wants out of this relationship. It's probably a mixture of both, wouldn't you say?
Would you like my take?
I would.
I like my take.
I'm not talking to the pop can over there.
Well,
babe.
sometimes you're like processing things through, and like, I have to clarify. You ask a question, but you're not really asking me a question. So I like to
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead and answer that.
I think, like, what would you say? Multifaceted. There's a few things. So I think there's part of you that is hearing that child, that inner child that didn't get what you needed. And so that voice is coming up and being like, this is what I need. And so I think that part of you needs to be heard very much. You have so much compassion for your mom. I see it. I can see it with your acts of love, your acts of kindness. The way that you like censor, like it is so obvious. And the way that you may have these things in here, but the way you continually forgive, like you'll have these hard conversations with her and there isn't change. There's no change. And you don't let that change how you interact with her. Like there's these feelings, but you very much just still allow her to be her. And you acknowledge that continuously. I think as she gets to, things go her way a lot. And then you have these moments where you want them to go your way. And I think you feel spoiled on that and like you're being a spoiled brat. But what I hear you doing is setting boundaries that weren't there. And then having a hard time when your boundaries when you're not enforcing your boundaries. Because there's been some things that boundaries needed to be set and it just wasn't working out that way. So I don't think you're being spoiled and be like, this is how I want it. You're trying to find the vocabulary to speak to your boundaries and healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish that there's a part of me that is having a really hard time, because there's sometimes we have interactions with our parents and we can see the direct correlation to our interaction with our children, right? We can see that effect, that linear thing that takes place of our parents, us, our kids, all these type of things. We can see how it played out, and we can see some of the ways that we're, repeating some of the same cycles that our parents did, but also a lot of the ways that we've broken those and had different relationships with our kids. And also learning still from our parents. Thank you, parents, for teaching us still, teaching us the ways that we don't want to interact with our kids as they grow up and become adults. But I'm having a hard time seeing this dynamic play out with our kids as they continue to grow up later on in their life. Because at some point they're going to get to a point where they start to process these relationships with us in a much different way than they are right now. And I'm scared.
Yeah. We're going to be on their end.
I'm scared for that.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want them to have to go through some of the same pain. And it'll be different, of course, but it's like, oh man, that's going to be hard.
Yeah.
And then I have to remember this moment of how my mom is showing up for me. And some of it I want to mirror, but then some of it I don't. Yeah. So I want to show up vastly different. If and when our children come to us and say, this is the new boundary, this is the thing that I want you to respect and understand, I want to implement it.
Exactly.
I want to make that shift and change. I want them to know that they were heard and seen and validated. And, I want to have that be a thing. But I'm fucking scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared for that dynamic to play out, because it will. It'll play out one day, right?
It will. Hopefully.
With all of them.
Hopefully it plays out. I'm like, it's scary, but hopefully, because that's healing for them. That's them holding themselves and like evolving and changing patterns. Because we're catching a lot of patterns, but we're also seeing a fuck ton of patterns that we did not catch. And we're like instilled. And now even like awareness of the ones that we didn't catch and trying to change it at this point in time, when really would have been nice if that could have been done when they were all little and at home, instead of, hi,
so many things.
I'm so sorry that now is when I can see it. And to think that that's everything, no, there's a shit ton that we cannot see. They're going to see.
You and I will be ready for kids in about another 15 years.
Right.
About 55, we'll be like, okay, give us some fucking babies. We're ready. No, not really give us babies universe.
Yeah, please, God, no.
That's about the time when we'll be squared away enough to raise healthy, functioning, emotional creatures that can move out into the world with little to no trauma.
Because all the 55-year-olds I know in my life are definitely not trauma repetitive people. Come on.
They're all squared away, right?
Yeah, I think we just continue to like be willing to be wrong and to grow. And then our accountability of I did this wrong and I'm sorry, I think goes a long ways for them.
Yeah.
Instead of, well, you know, you've seen the holding firm on choices and like, I was wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
We're also going to have boundaries still, because everything that comes, we can't just, you know.
Boundaries with our kids or with our parents?
We're going to have boundaries with our kids too.
Yeah.
That's the part
that's a hard part.
I'm still not.
But think about
like, fuck it, never mind, podcast out. Can't do this.
Showing them boundaries by implementing them ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Teach them with our actions, not with our words.
Yeah.
So thank you for tuning in on another wonderful episode of Coffee Talk.
Coffee Talk?
Did you not ever see that Saturday Night Live?
No, I did not.
That was a terrible accent I just did. But Mike Myers and, oh God, who was the other lady or the other character? But it was a Coffee Talk.
Yeah. I've seen very little Saturday Night Live.
That's something we probably shouldn't be talking about then.
Does it make you love me less?
Absolutely not.
I have hardly seen any Saturday Night Live. What are you going to do?
Saturday Night Live was like the taboo thing that you had to try to stay up and watch. Or
yeah, I was not allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it never grabbed me.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Anyways, remember, go to Instagram and sign up for our newsletter. We don't have a newsletter. You could sign up for something on Instagram if you like, but we won't send you shit.
You might get 2 free tickets to Brandi Carlile at the Gorge.
Go to
August
Instagram.
14th.
That's right. And enter to win those free concert tickets. And announcing the winner on July 9th. And I love you, Stephanie.
I love you, Craig.